Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk. This is the second one of these that we've done in the past 10 minutes. This is a podcast where we spend just a little bit of your time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host,
I was going to cut you off. I was going to let you. You've lost. I'm glad that this time you hit the record button.
Yes, I am. I'm keeping it real. So, if you can't tell by Ted and I's intro here, that's all weird. We just got done talking about this card today for about 15 minutes, and I realized that I didn't hit the record button. So we were just, it was our pre-record.
Yeah, we were just collecting all our ideas first for this one.
Yes, right. As long as those ideas are 3 cost and less, we can get them out in the show. But anyways, before we get into today's card, I do want to say thank you to all the patrons out there that are helping support the show, keep the lights on, help support the blog, and help support the community. Without you guys, this show and this Card Talk thing would not be as awesome as it is today. If you want to become part of the patron team, you can go right over here and join at patreon.com/cardtalk2018. We also have a blog that Matt, our resident wordsmith / blogmaster, takes care of. He's an amazing resource for us, and so glad that he joined the team a year and a half ago now. Wow, it's been a long time. He keeps track of the blog and puts out a written review along with our pod and our video reviews every week. So you can check out that over at cardtalk2018.com. And we have Micah doing Second Breakfast, doing playthroughs. I don't know if he does playthroughs of the cards that we review, but he definitely plays a lot of cards over there. So you can check out Micah every other Sunday, I think at 3 o'clock Eastern United States time, and on our YouTube channel. And so I think that that's me keeping it real here, and I will be glad to hand it over to Ted to talk about today's card.
Today's card is Galadriel. Big surprise. She's a 3-cost leadership ally. She's got 3 willpower, 0 attack, 0 defense, 3 hit points. She has the traits Noldor, Noble, and the following text that reads, at the end of the round, discard Galadriel from play. She also has a response. After you play Galadriel from your hand, search the top 5 cards of your deck for an attachment of cost 3 or less and put it into play. Put the remaining cards back in any order. She's from The Road Darkens, so she will be repackaged in the part 1 of the Lord of the Rings saga expansion, actually. So if you're looking at where you might acquire her after today's episode, that's one way to get her.
Yeah, and I'll start off and I'll hit the highlights that I was saying before I realized we weren't recording them. They all stay the same. Nothing has changed in the past 10 minutes. Caleb hasn't announced an errata. Yeah. So, I mean, the highlights are that, she's the only temporary ally when you compare to Saruman, Elrond, Gandalf, that in order to get her response, you need to play her from your hand. You need to pay for her. So you're paying for her plus whatever attachment she's bringing out into play. If she brings an attachment out into play, it's totally possible that she whiffs. So the only way you can get the attachment is doing that. You can't cheat her into play to get the attachment. Of course, you can cheat her into play to get the 3 willpower, which may be worth it, or maybe a desperation chump block or something. Maybe she's the only person you have in your hand, and you need a chump block. But when you play her from your hand and you get those, and you get that attachment, I mean, basically the world is your oyster, because there's no, it doesn't require a resource match. So the attachment doesn't have to be leadership. So you could be playing a mono leadership deck with spirit attachments, and you could bring out spirit attachments with this. So that's good. And so many of the attachments are 3 or less. The sword that was broken. Most of the weapons and armor, there's very few that you're not going to be able to bring out. So, like, you can't bring out any of the record attachments. You can't bring out resourceful. You can't bring out path of need.
Yeah, Citadel plate. There's a handful of really expensive attachments. But.
Yeah, but, in general, you'll be able to bring out an attachment. And I think the last thing that I wanted to say, which is a bummer because it probably should have been the first thing that I said, is that while I like this version of Galadriel, for me, when I'm inspired to play Galadriel, I'm almost always inspired to play the hero version. So this is one of those cases like Treebeard, the opposite of Treebeard, where the hero version just completely outshines the ally version. And I'm not saying that she can't go into a deck, but it's if you're going to play Galadriel, you're probably going to play the hero version because of how cool it is. And I'm not, there's some reasons to put her in a deck, but like, again, since you can't use her response and you try to cheat her into play using, let's say, Messenger of the King, that's not going to bring in, because you're not playing her from your hand, so you don't get a free attachment from the beginning if you play her Messenger of the King. It's hard to play her if you're not playing a leadership hero for the Grey Wanderer, because she can't come into play as your first card, Grey Wanderer. I mean, so she's limited in a lot of her ways to play her, but she's so broad in what she can do when you do play her, if that makes a lot of sense. If that makes any sense.
It does. So,
Ted, expound on what I'm trying to say, because you were doing such a good job at it before I realized that.
Unjumble some of David's thoughts, but you bring up some very good points. You get to search the top 5 cards of your deck for a 3-cost attachment, which there are several 3-cost attachments that are great. Some of the ones we named 10 minutes ago. We named some of Gandalf's attachments, like his staff, Shadowfax. You have Unexpected Courage. You have Sword That Was Broken. If you're playing leadership, you might have Sword That Was Broken for Aragorn, or you might have the Red Book of Westmarch for a Hobbit hero. And what's cool is you don't have to, along with it, right, David, you said there's no restrictedness. There's nothing restricted about other than the cost. You don't even have to play the attachment on a hero you control, or a character you control. So if you pull out Unexpected Courage, you can play it on someone else's hero, anywhere else on the table, anyone eligible for that attachment. You just put it into play. So that's very good. I think the number one thing I usually think about with this is if I'm running a leadership deck, there's a particular 2-cost attachment that is very good that most leadership decks want out on the table. She will be the gift of stewardship, Steward of Gondor. Which is crazy, because then if you fish out Steward of Gondor with her, you can then trigger it and use the attachments. So then you get 2 resources back. Very, very strong. It's possible for her to whiff. I'm sure. Have you had that happen? Have you had to feel bad? Where you're like, and I need a single... No, nothing.
I actually put her into a deck, but never got her out on the table. And then at the con, I saw her whiff, but never had her whiff when I was playing her.
I think that's part of the trick with her is you generally, when you're playing cards that do things like search the top 5 or 10, you want to kind of have if you're only running 4 attachments in your entire deck, probably shouldn't be using this card, but if you have like a third of your deck as attachments, you got like 15, 18, 20 attachments, it's a pretty good, right? Especially if you didn't get one in your opening hand. So a couple other just really neat things with her. After you search the top 5, I think an underrated thing is you get to put the top the rest of the cards back in the order. You don't
Right.
shuffle, right? So that's kind of helpful. You can see what your next cards coming up are, rearrange them, or it might force you to want to shuffle where you're like, oh, I need to I need to do something else to shuffle my deck because I don't want any of these cards.
Right.
And you can also manipulate cards too from your deck. You could use something like Wizard Pipe, which we talked about in the last episode, where you could put an attachment on the top card of your deck with Wizard Pipe. And the last thing I really want to highlight is you mentioned not being able to cheat her into play via like sneak attack, but David, you can reduce her cost and play her for less with To the Sea, To the Sea.
To the Sea, To the Sea.
So that's a spirit attachment where you can discard cards from your hand to reduce the cost of playing a Noldor ally, which she has traded Noldor. So I've done that before too, where I'm like, all right, I'm going to discard cards, player for one leadership resource, and then fish out the attachment. Fantastic. It feels really great to do that if you got cards to spare because you're running Aristor, just lots of card draw, with Beravor, some other lore hero. That's pretty nifty. And do you think she touches upon theme at all?
Yes. Right. I mean, in the 10 minutes that you were talking about this while we weren't recording, you were talking about Galadriel as the giver of gifts, right? And so she gave the Fellowship all sorts of gifts when they left Lothlorien, to go towards their next phase, the Falls of Raros and passing the Argonath and all that stuff. But so I think that this is definitely a thematic play in a lot of ways, and I'm sure that that's what you were going to say. And I hate to I'm giving you all due credit that this matches her theme.
I just wanted to hear it from you.
Yeah,
I think it. I think both versions of her card from a theme, like they both represent both aspects of her. Right, like hitting those two things.
Yeah, that she's like the heart and soul of the Noldor. The oldest Noldor, been around, the strongest Noldor on the planet. So that's the hero version, and then the ally version, the giver of gifts. And I think that that's what this artwork is representing, her on the side of the, giving gifts to the Fellowship. The one last thing that I always bring up whenever you have these temporary cards in play is that, remember, the refresh phase is the last phase of the round. So Galadriel will ready, and then anything that requires you to exhaust an ally in order to use, say, a very good tale, you can use Galadriel as one of those allies to bring out other allies before she disappears. So it's a good timing thing for these cards that disappear. So like, Gandalf, Elrond disappear at the end of the round. They'll refresh. There's an action window. You can exhaust them, use and play a very good tale or whatever else it happens to be.
Very good point.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not unique to Galadriel, but
right. But she's one of those targets to
get the most out of her, and she's in Sphere for that. So and 3 is not a horrible cost to put into your very good tail pool.
No, it's fantastic, and I tend to like if mono leadership decks for me, she tends to make the cut because she's a first turn play in mono leadership to not only get you 3 extra willpower that first turn, but then to also get you hopefully some type of she'll go away, but then she's left you with an attachment.
Right. I mean, even if it's a sword that was broken, you're going to get that willpower back because the sword that was broken gives everybody a +1 if it goes on Aragorn, right? So I mean, there's all sorts of great things that go in there. Plus the theme, right? We talked about the theme of Galadriel giving Aragorn the sword that was broken.
Yeah,
You know,
right. All kinds of crazy. Like she'll give you anything from she could give you Limbus. She could give you
fast
a
hitch,
book or broken sword. She give you a fast hitch.
right? Because
All kinds of stuff. She can give you courage.
yeah.
So many weapons, armor, all kinds of stuff. So, but yeah, I would just say the general tip is make sure you have enough attachments where you're trying to fish one
Now,
out. She'll help you
do
get
you
there.
have a cutoff for that, Ted? You're the resident expert deck builder.
Uh,
Like is there like if you're building a 50 card deck, right? You're not building a Perilous Voyage deck. You're just kind of building a standard deck. Like, is there like 10 attachments to make sure that you have it, or
10,
do you go more?
yeah, 10's like too little, assuming a 50 card deck. Like I said, the rule is I'd probably want to be close to about a third, like 30, yeah, like a third of my deck being attachments.
So like 17.
Yeah,
15,
somewhere
16, 17.
in there. And if you don't have a lot of attachments, but those attachments are really key, you're like, oh, I really need to get out my armor destrier because I need extra defenses in my deck, and your only attachments are armor destrier. You could still do it to try to find that one attachment, but you want to make her at least get you something. So I would generally include enough attachments. Yeah, like 10 isn't enough. I would say like 15 is my preference. I prefer a lot of times I make sure there's more before I include her.
And that's not, I mean, and that's not unreasonable either. Like that's not, if you have a deck that's got, 20 or 22, allies, and then, 18 attachments, that's still 10 events. Like that's not a horrible breakdown for a general deck. Obviously there's
right
specialty decks and stuff that,
mm-hmm.
build, but so general use, she can fit into those things.
Yeah. And she may whiff, but post in your comments below things that maybe she's fished out for you if you've played her before, and feel free to call out the time I could see a player like playing her and then she misses and they're like, never again will I play this card.
Right.
Right.
When you have all sorts of pejoratives.
Yeah, cards that like when you play a minstrel that whiffs, or even a horse breeder, which searches the top 10 cards for a mount. Right. Still possible. Right. Like if you don't have enough mounts, or they're all buried at the bottom.
Right.
But if you have a part on the table, give her a chance. I'd say you want to be running at least 2 leadership heroes because 3 is very expensive. And if you run 2 leadership heroes and one of those heroes is Denethor, who gets you an extra resource, 2 extra resources to start the game, that can also let you play her first turn as well, if you happen to get her in your hand or do a mulligan. So
sounds great.
Yeah.
Should we ring her?
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about the art first.
Yeah, you mentioned it. But we kind of glossed over it. You mentioned where she was. Looks like standing at the riverbank.
Let me generally say this. This is one of those times where I really appreciate FFG and their art. We've had Caleb on the show a million times talk about this, and it's like, this is one of those things where the art is classy. It's it's not over sexualized. It's just an elf on the side of the river. Like this is one of those things where if it was a different game and a different time, there'd be like this real buxom, skimpy outfit elf that's, but you can't do that with Tolkien. And I love that the game keeps that Tolkien theme. She is obviously stately and beautiful, long flowing blonde hair, but she's composed, and, it's not a caricature of Tolkien. I feel like that's Tolkien right there.
Yeah. It's a fantastic rendition of her. I mean, her hero version is great, but this one is also, I think, stellar. Yeah, I do. Cards that have great artwork too. I like. It makes me want to play them. I was like, I want to include this card just so I can, see it on the table and look at it when I play. And it's unfortunate that she goes away at the end of the round, right? Because then you don't even get to keep this art on the
Well, she
table for
stays on the
more than
top. She stays on the top of your discard pile, though. So
yeah, until
Ted,
you
you could
right, yeah,
keep
right.
staring
Yeah.
at her. Should we ring her?
Yeah. Let's have her jump through
If you
the ring.
liked it, you should have put a ring on it. So let's do that. So for anybody who doesn't know or may be new to the show, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we rank a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card to rule them all, or one of the best cards in the game, and a 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made, or not very good. So Ted, I went first last time, so go ahead. What do you think? What do you think of
Galadriel. I tend to play her quite a bit in leadership decks that are attachment focused because I want those attachments. Now she doesn't go in every single leadership deck that I make, so but I think her effect is strong, and the stats, like, it's thematic too. Everything fits the character, and I very much like the effect. And even that little underrated part, like I said, where you get to rearrange the cards that you see as opposed to just shuffling them back in. So I'm gonna give her a 4.
Ah,
I settled on 4. I almost went with 3, but I'm gonna 4, just because that effect can miss. It can miss. Her hero version is certainly very popular too, as you mentioned. So if you put her in a deck, you might have to sideboard her out if you're going to like an event or a convention or something like that. But it's good. It's sort of card draw and net resource swapping. If you get the attachment, you don't lose that many. So it's a good effect. I like it. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, I may be dashing the hopes of the listeners out there. So I think that this version of Galadriel suffers. Well, firstly, it suffers from her hero version just being so much better, especially solo play. In solo play, you need to build a deck that's going to do everything, and that version of Galadriel helps you on so many. It helps you, doesn't give you characters that exhaust. You can get Nenyen, you can get, 4 will. Anyways, so I mean, that hero does so many things that's the first thing. And also playing solo, if you're relying on Galadriel to do stuff for you in a solo game, you're probably not building your deck right. You want to be able to, if you draw Sword that was broken, you want to be able to play it. You don't want to be able to, you don't want to have to wait for Galadriel to come out and then have to wizard pipe it back onto the top of your deck. And, you don't want to do these shenanigans. So Galadriel, I feel like in a solo setting, which is primarily what I play, I feel like is a fun card, but I feel like it really just fits into like 1 or 2 different archetypes to be used the way that she needs to be used. I can see the advantage, like you said, in a multiplayer game where she's putting, attachments over here and, helping people quest over there. And, then she comes out again and more attachments, and you bring her back from the, Will of the West, there's all sorts of things that you can do, right? You could Glatham, Orphan. No, Orphan doesn't bring her back because she's a Noldor, not a Sylvan. But
yeah.
I mean, there's all sorts of ways to bring her back into her hand, and I don't know. So, so I could see the allure for multiplayer more than solo. So that said, I think I have to go with a 7 for this ally version of Galadriel because I want to make her work, and I actually funny story. Sorry, guys out there. This is what happens when we get through the content so quickly because we already recorded it once. Is that there was... It's no secret, Ted and I, when we talk about cards, this is what spurs us deck building. And so, after recording shows, we had talked about Galadriel and bringing in something. Maybe it was the Red Book of Westmarch, bringing it in with Galadriel, whatever. I don't know. But like I got thinking about it, like I sat bolt upright from asleep because I was dreaming about building a deck with Galadriel in it, but using her as an MOTK hero because she would only be 6 costs to bring out a thing for free, and then I realized that wouldn't work, and so that's where I'm, like there's a lot of
Things
inspiration
that will not come to pass.
right, right. So, anyways. With a Sharpie, I can, I have a Sharpie here. I could do just about anything with So, anyways.
Do whatever you want. Yeah.
So that's why, yeah, we're playing custom content.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Solo, I think I have to give her a 7 because I think she fits into like a couple of really good archetypes, but she's not really a general use player, and I don't know, just not. She doesn't inspire me really like the hero version to be used all over the place. So
sure,
there you have it out there, everybody. Get the hate coming. Tell me how much she is.
David's
amazing.
wrong. Try the card.
Right.
Thanks for joining.
Right. Okay, everybody. Have a great day.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube, and there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.